One of the pleasures of gaming is that you can go back in time and play older games and play them with the original components and have access to almost a time capsule or recreation of the exact game state, at least vis-a-vis the game and components, as you would have 20, 30, 40 years ago. Sometimes you can go back and have access a little bit to your own life as it was also. Maybe not that long ago, maybe for some of us that long ago. I was going through my game closet the other day trying to find something with a small footprint and a short play time, because with the school year getting underway and things of that nature, my gaming time is a lot more limited, and I was looking for something portable and easy and not necessarily video material, but just something for myself. What I came across was this copy of Pocket Dungeon, which is the original rule set, and in the folder that I had it in, Welcome to Pocket Dungeon, it's right here, I discovered some saved material from some games that I had run with my oldest daughter, who was 3-4 years younger at the time, and I could see that I was reminded of how much fun we had. Here's her little drawing creating this character. I think that looks like an abandoned game, and I'm fairly certain that we did some house ruling too. I'm not sure. I don't remember the rules yet. I'm going to go back and revisit all of this to play some of our games. We may have tinkered with some of the rules. Anyway, I went online to try to print out a new sheet because I wanted to play. We also made some little pocket versions. There's some character, and here definitely is some sort of mommy variant that we came up with. I don't know how that differs from the regular rules, but apparently it did. And I think this is just something we made up with the regular rules. In any case, I went to print out the new sheets and discovered that indeed it has been relatively recently updated with a new rule set, and printed that out and put it in my in a binder here. The original rule set was like so teeny. This is almost like too big because everything is really spread out, but I have it and am going to attempt at least a video. If you're watching this, I guess at least felt I succeeded to some extent. Attempt a video just describing this game a little bit, showing you a little bit of what it offers, because I really enjoyed it when I was playing it. There are so many systems out there that try to recreate like a D&D experience for the solo player. This one, of all those that I've tried, was the one that stuck with me, and that I played a number of times, and when I found it in the closet, I had forgotten about it and I was happy to see it. So I'm going to attempt to do some type of video going through some of the basic rules. Obviously, the visual interest here is going to be very small, so it's going to be for diehard people only, but I remember this as offering a really enjoyable, light gameplay experience, kind of akin to what the feeling that you get from the Death Maze Citadel of Blood. If you watch those videos, this is very similar, implemented in a totally different way, of course, and much more modern. I mean, even the first edition of this game, but I enjoyed it, and I'm going to try to show you why and maybe offer you a little bit of background so you might consider printing it out for yourself. The original concept for this game was that it was meant to be very small and able to be played and hidden, I guess, while you're at work. And I just want to read you something because I sort of appreciated this, although I will rush to say I never played it at work. Pocket Dungeon is what I have come to call a stealth game or ninja game. What that is a game that can be played out in the open without people knowing you are playing a game. Pocket Dungeon at its core is a dungeon generator, the Dungeon system, and slimmed-down dungeon crawler. The cool part about this is that the game also serves as a tutorial on how to stealth game using items you will find or would not look out of place on your office or school desk. Pocket Dungeon is completely free to print and play, but if you enjoy the game and would like donation information, it can be found in the FAQ at the end. So this is where I came up having these, what was printed out, these little rule sets and ways of playing it. I never actually used this, but we did print this out as references, so it could actually look like you had a to-do list or something like that. It was kind of a cute concept, but what resulted was that the sheets to actually play it on, which I'll pull back and show you here, I had showed you before, ended up being a pretty small grid for the dungeon. And when I play, I like to fill in a lot of information about what is in the rooms. This is the updated version. It has an even smaller grid, so I would recommend, unless you are actually trying to play it at work, in which case you'd be using the really small version, I recommend using, I've got standard graph paper here. I think I'm going to use this graph paper with a slightly larger squares in it to get more information into my dungeon. I just want to say one thing about the solo dungeon creation experience, because back in 1975, Gary Gygax wrote and published in a magazine called The Strategic Review rules for solo dungeon creation. And this, therefore, dates back all the way to the origins of D&D. That this is a kind of, I think, somewhat forgotten aspect of D&D, though there weren't a lot of published solo adventures out there. There was extensive rules on solo dungeon creation that Gygax himself wrote, and at some point I was thinking I might go through that and demonstrate it a little bit on a video. That's just an aside. So when you're setting out to do this, if you are interested at all in the history of D&D and RPGs, you just know that dating back from the beginning, from one of the creators of the entire system, is this concept that people might be doing this on their own. In the interest of keeping this moderately short, and because, as I said, this is visually really challenging to put on video, I'm just going to refer back to a game that, one of my older games, the walkthrough I started to do in playing this on video was not good. The creation of the dungeon is very basic. You're rolling on D6 or D8 to determine the size of the room, the number of doors there is, whether or not they're locked. I'm not sure. Yeah, here we go. 1 to 4 unlocked and locked. Number of monsters, treasure, and in this case, the direction that you go. Now, the 2.0 rules are slightly different. I'm not going to compare the two. If you're interested, you can sort of compare them yourself and see what you would want to play. I think the 2.0 rules don't give you direction. And you are playing a single character here, and the character's options have pretty standard fantasy tropes in terms of the races. You could be a human, elf, half-elf, dwarf, gnome, halfling, half-orc, and depending on what race you choose, you will get modifiers plus or minus to various attributes such as your strength or your agility or your willpower. Again, really standard stuff. You are rolling d6s and doing a plus or minus to get that. In the 2.0 rules, they have different, what they call monster packages, and they're somewhat thematic. You're choosing your monster level based on the level of dungeon that you are going into. So for level 1, you're going to be choosing one of the tier 1 monsters, and we'll just come over and take a look at the options. So for example, you could choose the humanoids package with some kobolds, goblins, and hobgoblins, and then of course the boss. There's an undead package, a cult package, and let's see, what else do we have here? We've got a beast package with some giant rats and some acidic slime. This is sort of related to one that I played and died by some slime in an earlier game. From the earlier rules, Plumbing the Depths, and then the themes are carried through, so you've got some tier 2 monsters with bigger values and such. Moving back to this sheet here, now I'm showing you something that I did and made up my own theme, my own monsters, and in fact, my own shortened game. Because the standard dungeon in the game has 30 rooms. The boss is in room 30, and I recall that it seemed a little long to me to play that way, so I basically truncated the dungeon, and instead of the smaller monsters appearing in rooms 1 to 9, and my version that I played here, they appeared just in room 1 to 5. I am also showing you something that I made up based on my own monsters, my own theme, and this is something that is great about this rule set because you can do that and it's really well thought out, so it sort of works. You could just plug in different monsters, obviously, for the various themes, and in fact, in the actual packages that he's got here in the 2.0 rules, for example, looking at the giant rat, you can see it's got a defense of 9, hit points 3, range 1, can't remember what the M is, etc. It does a hit on 1 to 2, and it does 2 damage. If you look down, you can see the Darklings in Plumbing the Depths have basically the same values. So that is certainly very doable. And what you're doing, again, pretty standard mapping. You're creating through the die rolls what rooms you're going into, whether or not they have trapped doors, and whether, if they do have trapped doors, they have treasure inside. And the monsters, one of the things that's nice in the game is something called a fudge point. And what a fudge point is, you can see here that you can accumulate a fudge point for every 5 monsters that you slay, and you accumulate those on your record sheet, and then you have a choice of using them at some point later in the game for any of these reasons. You could adjust a die roll, or gain a strength, or gain some hit points. And that's a nice little game rule twist. It gives you some decisions to make along the way. Indeed, there are some decisions to be made early on in what the game refers to as the professions for the characters. So, for example, if you're playing a wizard here, which is typically what I end up playing in all of these games because I like magic, it will tell you what the modifications are to your health points, what the best attribute that you should have is, and whatever restrictions there are. And in the case of the wizard, you are restricted on the amount or the depth or the efficacy of the armor that you can use. You can't use any shields. I mean, basically it's guiding you toward using magic. And everybody has action points that they can use, and they have abilities that cost various action points. So while the game is pretty standard, walking into a room, fighting monsters, as you play it, you will be accumulating options, whether it is spells or various types of weapons. There's also one-time use scrolls in the game. These are magic scrolls that will allow you to do something. There's a scroll of healing, there are some spells, some dark energy. Of course, there are magic items that you can attain during the course of the game. And here we are at the spells table. You're allowed to memorize a certain number of spells. The wizards can memorize the most. And treasure tables, you can pick up weapons, you can pick up exotic weapons, you can pick up armors and shields. Again, pretty standard stuff, but the rule set's really well integrated, and it plays really smoothly. And that's a peek at what I'm doing next. Possibly, maybe, Ice War. So I just wanted to post this almost as a way of thank you for the designer of the game, and probably to the person who updated it too, although I haven't yet played the updated rules, although I plan on it. I do not know the designer. I don't know either of the people involved in this game, have no communication with them. There's no reason personally why to them I'm doing this, but I really do appreciate the effort that people put into the gaming community to create games, and for me, this was a nice way of spending 45 minutes or so. Again, I shortened the dungeon, but 45 minutes or so just immersed in this little world that is pretty easy to get into. So there's a taste of Pocket Dungeon, and if you like it, you should check it out. Thanks for watching.